Hello, everyone. My name is, she already mentioned, is Lasse Marz. I'm working as research associate at Bielefeld University and in the project as academic expert. And today I am, uh, it's a pleasure for me to give you some insights on the theoretical ideas we had when suggesting the items for the digital topic on the Kronos panel, and also show you some first insights on what came out of the data collection of the Kronos 3 panel. So that first I will talk a little bit about the digital divide and what it is and how it developed in the last years, and then we will talk about the future challenges. And today I picked digital skills in times of AI and social media and stress. So more or less best of the work that we did in the last 2 years. Before I start talking about the digital divide, I want to make something clear at first. The digital divide is something that can be observed within digitalization, and digitalization describes a process of development of technologies and their spread throughout societies. And this process will always be embedded in existing structures if you think about the economy and all the other circumstances that we live on. But this process is not my focus today. I want to focus on the consequences. And when I talk about consequences, I mean the inequalities. We here at our working group are always focusing on inequalities by groups within the society. Now, let's move on to the digital divide. The very basic question of the digital divide, or the main observation of the digital divide at first, was who has access to internet, who has access to information and communication technology, and who hasn't, and what does it depend on? And if we go back to the late 1960s, this question could be answered very quickly and very easily, because when the first preliminary version of the internet was introduced, the so-called ARPANET, you had to have access to one of the 4 computers you see here on the map, which are located at the US West Coast. And with that, the question could be answered, okay, these are the people who have access to the internet and who have not. But from a sociological point of view, this question might be a little bit boring to be answered. And in the next 30 years, we had some rapid development in connectivity across the whole world. So when the internet was first introduced, it was only a small amount of people who could access it. And after some time, it was technically enabled for many, many more, for the vast majority of the world to access the internet. But still we found that this access to the internet depends on determinants of inequality, by which we mean, for example, gender, age, or migration background, and also socioeconomic resources, mainly occupational status, income, and education. So we could see here the first shift from is the access technologically enabled, is it not, and in the second step, other determinants it depends on. But now we are not in the 1990s anymore, but in the 2020s, and that's why we want to have a look at the development from since then. And here I picked a graph that is also part of the Naked Digital data summary that I produced within the project. And what you can see here is how daily internet use rates in Europe developed between 2002 and 2023. And what we can see here, it is by age groups, not that important for my point here. What we can see here is that it increased over time since then. So we can see an overall trend from many people, nearly all of the people. If you look at the let's start the laser pointer. If you look at the youngest people under 25 years in the 2020s, they over 90% of them use the internet on a daily basis. For sure, in the last slide, I talked about access, and now I'll talk about use. I know it's not the same, but I think we could all agree that um, daily internet use implies access to the internet. So we know from other data that the potential internet access for the people, the rates are even higher. But the point I want to make here is that the question of the digital divide shifted over time. So first it was a question of access, and with now in 2023, nearly everyone having internet access, or nearly, and many of them using it on a daily basis. It's not so much a question um, of access anymore, and therefore very early on the scientific focus shifted, and now we talk about multiple levels of digital divide. The first level is the one I just talked about. It describes the individual's option of using information and communication technologies, of accessing the internet. The second one is the individual's digital skill and their usage pattern. So the question, are the people capable of using the digital technology and they have access to, and how often do they actually use it? And then the third level is the offline outcome. So not just the question, do I have access? After the question, do I have access? Can I use it? How often do I use it? Is more or less, what do I get from it? And there can always be, and there we can think of positive and negative effects for people using the internet. Positive examples could be that if you can use your smartphone, some instant messenger to keep contact with people you do not live nearby. So you gain better relationship quality, for example, maybe if you use the internet. If we think about what we are doing here and right now, any type of flexible working is, or many types of flexible workings are enabled by digital technologies, by the use of digital technologies. Home office, working from wherever your employer allows you to, is also some kind of inclusion factor, some kind of outcome of the third level digital divide. But it doesn't always have to be that fun. On the other hand, we can increasingly see that people are exposed to misinformation online, exposed to harassment, insulting behavior, and that this can lead to uncertainties, to bad self-esteem, and many other stressors or negative consequences you can think about. So that's just a really short overview on the digital divide. And before I start with the challenges, I tried a little experiment which I do a lot because if you do science about digital topics and artificial intelligence, you will use the technologies yourself to understand them better. And what you will see in my presentation in the next few slides, or coming again and again, is some AI, maybe sloppy, but I just wanted to include it here too. And I think this worked out very well this time. So for example, what I did when I started preparing the presentation last week, I asked ChatGPT to make a picture of what it thinks the digital divide is. And I think these two, and I didn't give too much much detailed information on what should be produced, shows some really important aspects of the digital divide. If you look at the upper left picture, you can see there this implies the idea of some kind of global digital divide, which we can see, and also the contrast of city and rural or countryside areas, which is also still a point if you think about the digital divide. And then on the right side, you can see they are trying to make a comic out of it, and you can see even though both people are in very, very different situations, that doesn't actually or determine whether the one on the one side is happier than the other, because to me, the person who actually has the internet access on the left does more or less seem overwhelmed by all the information he gets, or the constant pressure he gets. So just this as a little closer for the theoretical part that we have. So now for the current and future challenges. And as I already mentioned, I want to start with artificial intelligence and ICT skills. Just a quick reminder, what do I mean when I talk about ICT skills? I mean abilities of people, or the capability of people to use digital devices and use the internet for their own benefit. Within the data that we collected in the project, we distinguish between information literacy, communication skill, content creation skill, data security or privacy skill, and problem-solving skill. I think these terms do more or less stand for themselves, so I do not need to go into detail here. But what needs to be made clear here is what is AI here, and AI in this case is doing the same, utilizing artificial intelligence. And maybe just a quick reminder here, what do I mean when I say AI in this context? I mean new forms of artificial intelligence. I mean large language model generative AI that actually is able to communicate with us and produce own content. For sure, there are more scales than just ICT scales. There's an internet scale that was developed, and there's a lot there. But these dimensions of ICT skills are the one you can find in the Chronos data, and that's why I mentioned them here. Yeah, and now let's look at the data. Maybe we see some interesting things. Also, always thinking about the digital divide that we just learned about. In the Chronos panel, we asked the people to self-assess their skill, and so they were always given a statement, and then they could say whether the statement is true for them or not. And what I brought here is one example for ICT content creation skill, where the statement was, I know how to use word processing software on a digital device. And what we can see here in the graph is that what the people answered by age group. Here we distinguish between people of 35 years and older and a younger age group, and between 3 educational levels. And what we can see is that most of the people are quite confident that they know how to use word processing software on a digital device. I mean, most of us might agree that this is a very low bar at this time, and that's true. But at the same time, you got to start somewhere. Now, what do we see in the data? We see that we see some inequality patterns that we might have expected, but I just want to name them right here, so it becomes very clear. Younger people are more likely to say they know how to use word processing software on digital devices than older people, while older people are still at 70% who say that's very true of them. So one could say this skill is just very widespread. And then for education, we again find some inequality patterns showing that higher education goes along with higher likelihood of being able or self-assessing, that one is able to use word processing software. And now what was important for us, or maybe even more interesting for the future, would be how does it look if people want to create content using AI. And this time the statement was, I know how to instruct artificial intelligence to create or adapt text. And if you look at the second figure that we can see here, it shows that, again, the inequality patterns are more or less the same. So again, young people are more likely to be confident they can use artificial intelligence to create and adapt text, and higher education goes along with higher likelihood of doing the same than medium or low education. But what we can also see is that that the skill is much less widespread across the whole sample than the classic ICT content creation skill. At the end of this part, I will make some reflecting comments on this, but this is just the first finding that we have here. So we have inequality patterns in ICT skills, we have inequality patterns in AI skills, and we have less skill, or AI skill overall is less spread than ICT skill. I brought a second example which illustrates the complexity of measuring ICT skills. In this case, it is information literacy. First, again, the ICT skill. This time, the statement was, I know how to check the truthfulness of information and content found on the internet. And if you look at the figure, you will see not so many differences compared to the slide before. So again, people are quite confident they can do so, and young people are more confident than older people. Higher educated are more likely to be confident about this than lower educated people. But if we compare the ICT skill now to the AI skill, we will find something a little bit different. And normally I would try to have a discussion with you, but maybe we do not have the time. So I will just say what I think we can find here. First of all, the statement was, in this case, I know how to recognize whether text, image, or video was generated or altered by artificial intelligence. And first of all, if you look at the age groups, we can see, again, young people much more confident than older people that they can recognize whether AI was at work when creating or changing the content that you see. But you do not see so much differences, or barely any differences, in education. So highly educated individuals do not really think they are not really more likely than medium educated to say they would recognize whether text, image, or video was generated or altered by artificial intelligence. So what I want to say here is that this result is different to the other three items that we had before. Why could this be? First of all, what we know from self-assessing skills is that there is a positive correlation with actual skill, which makes sense. Why would we even ask the question if it wasn't the case? So people who actually have a good skill are more likely to say they have a good skill in whatever you ask them than people who are not as skilled. But there is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which describes the phenomenon that if people have a lot of knowledge about something um, and know there's much more to know, there's a possibility that they um, underestimate a little bit their own capabilities because they know there's so much more that they could be capable of, but are not. And on the other hand, if you do not have this context knowledge, if you do not know what is possible, you will probably overestimate your own capabilities. So that's what could be happening here. That's the first point. Then, and I want to make clear, correct me if I'm wrong, the data was collected in the last 2 years. So we are still from now on, saying early stage of AI. But actually, in some cases, the answer to recognize whether one is able to recognize whether text, image, or video was generated or altered by artificial intelligence, if you say no, that's actually the correct answer. So we live in a world right now where AI becomes better and better, and it might show some critical thinking ability if we say I cannot do this. So just to keep this in mind, and especially if you work with the data, and also maybe a good point for discussion on how do we even measure AI skills if it changes so rapidly. And yeah, I also wanted to add something to visualize again. Maybe some of you already have heard in the past about the so-called Will Smith eating spaghetti test. The Will Smith eating spaghetti test is some internet phenomenon, I would say, that emerged with AI, and it produced some very interesting pictures for all of us. So what you can see here is three screenshots of Will Smith. Maybe you recognized him. And the first one is from 2023, and the last one is from this year. And they are all related to the Will Smith eating spaghetti test. What is the Will Smith eating spaghetti test? The Will Smith eating spaghetti test is some kind of informal benchmark test that wants to observe how the AI, how strong AI is getting, how it develops over time. So every some months, somebody uses a very new model of video generating AI to produce a video saying, giving the prompt, make a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti. And I would say that it took all of us probably some seconds to realize that the left one is made by AI, and it would take us maybe some more seconds or even hours to realize whether these are made by AI too on the right side. And I can tell you all of them are AI creations. So that is just a quick reminder on how complicated it is to even realize AI for us nowadays. And we cannot tell whether it's becoming more complicated, or we can tell, but we cannot say at which point it will actually impossible will it be impossible at some point. I can't tell you that right now. So what do we learn from the skills part? We can say the digital skills divide still persists, which we could see because inequality patterns were there for ICT skills, and they are still there for AI skills. And what we could also see is that the skill transfer to new technologies is limited, which for sure also is related to the fact that AI is spreading, and when the data was collected, we were in another stage than we were now, but this doesn't change the finding on the skill transfer. And the two last points that I just made is measuring AI skills is complicated because the technology is developing so quickly, and also the Dunning-Kruger effect. So now we had this, and now for the last part, social media. I see I'm a bit over time now, but you can stop me anytime. I just wanted to also just show you really quickly some findings on social media, on use patterns and stressors, because they are so highly debated across the whole world right now. I think some countries have also already prohibited social media for minors, and some others are trying to. So, and the questions that we are asking is social media a new source of techno stress, implying that behavioral expectations, that privacy issues, and possibly crime are negatively associated with individuals' loneliness, self-esteem, or mental health. So in this case, I do not want to take the approach and talk too much about inequalities anymore, but just show some data that we already have, and implications that we can find here. So first of all, we asked the people in the Kronos panel how often they use social media for different purposes. In this case, you can see posting content, reacting to content, and scrolling through social media. And what we can see here is that that people are more likely to use social media in a passive way. So only 7% of the people are posting stuff daily. 25% are reacting or reposting content on a daily basis, while half of the people scrolls through social media without searching for anything specific. I think this time of doom scrolling, as the public term has established, we would all be aware of. And this is really interesting for us because if you think about the second as well as the third level of the digital divide, which describes on the one hand the use patterns and on the other hand the outcomes, it might show us that when we started off saying the access and use is unequal, we meant having access is good and using the internet is some kind of privilege. And now we move to the point where this is not necessarily the case anymore, but yeah, using it in a way or reducing the internet use might be something good right now. Just real quick, I wanted to bring a stressor that further deepens the understanding of what I just said, because it might be a little bit of an answer to the question why people are even on social media. We here have a statement that says, to what extent would you say that social media pressures you to regularly post content? And I showed you the results this time on a scale from 0 to 10 by the social media use patterns. So we can see here people who not use social media at all, people who use social media daily and not daily and daily. And what we can see here is that those who are not using social media are the most likely to say that they feel pressured to regularly post content on social media, which is, I would say, really interesting. So there might be people who cope or who decide to not go on social media anymore because the pressures them so much. And that's what you couldn't also see in the lower part of the graph, where we can see that those who feel mentally bad or very bad, a little bit more likely to feel pressured to post content regularly. So we do not know the association, the direction of the causality here, but what we know is higher pressure goes along with worse mental health. So I want to leave you with some main takeaways. First of all, the initial question of the digital divide. This appears more and more, especially in Europe. So because more or less everyone is potentially able to access the internet, but the inequality patterns that we see re-emerge in new technologies. One of the technologies, AI, we do not see that inequality patterns re-emerge, but also that AI skills are far less spread than ICT skills. And for social media, we see the vast majority of the individuals in Europe is on social media. And we can also say that using social media is associated with stress. So, and now it took me 15 minutes more than I thought, but yeah, just realized that I wanted to give you all of the input. And if you have any questions, I'm still here for some minutes, but for now, thank you so much for your attention.